Before houses had names, before doors had hinges, before windows held back the weather with clear glass, there was a low place under stone, a frame of branches leaning toward the frozen ground, a wall of hide moving softly in the wind, and somewhere in the middle of that dim little world, a coal still glowing beneath a blanket of ash. Tonight we are going back to that first gentle miracle. Not to a throne room, not to a battlefield, not to a city with towers and roads, but to a winter home made by hands that had learned how to ask the cold for one more night of mercy. Settle yourself softly now. Let your shoulders lower. Let your jaw loosen. Let your eyes rest, whether they remain open or begin to close. The place where you are is safe, and the winter we are about to visit is far away, held at a distance by time, by walls, by blankets, by the soft kindness of the present. You do not have to endure that ancient cold. You do not have to gather wood in the dark, mend a wall with numb fingers, or wake before dawn to discover whether the fire survived. You only have to listen. You only have to drift beside it, as though the past were a slow river carrying you towards sleep. Imagine the world beneath a pale ice age sky. The land rolls outward in muted colors. Gray and white, brown where frozen grass pushes through snow, blue where shadows gather beneath stone. The air is very clear. Every sound seems to travel farther than it should. A branch cracking in the distance feels close. A raven's call seems to hang for a long time above the plain. There are no roads here, no lamps, no glass, no stove waiting obediently in the corner. There is only weather, distance, memory, and the human ability to make a small warm place where no warm place had been promised. At first, the shelter is difficult to see. It is tucked against a ridge of stone, half hidden by snow banked along its lower edge. A shallow overhang provides part of the roof. The rest is made from poles, branches, hide, brush, packed moss, clay, and the patient labor of many people. Smoke rises from a gap near the top, thin and pale, then vanishes into the winter air. From far away, it might look like nothing more than a dark fold in the land. But if you could come closer, slowly, quietly, you would see that this fold is full of decisions. A pole has been angled so snow will slide instead of gathering too heavily. A hide has been overlapped so the wind must turn before entering. A line of stones holds the lower wall down against the ground. Moss is pushed into a seam that opened yesterday. Clay has dried in the cracks between rocks. A piece of bone, smooth by use, serves as a peg. A cord of sinew holds one corner tight. No part of it is decorative in the modern sense, yet every part carries intelligence. Every part says, someone noticed, someone remembered, someone cared enough to repair this before night came again. This is not a cozy home because it is easy. It is cozy because it is hard-won. It is smoky, crowded, damp in places, cold at the edges, and always in need of mending. But inside it, the wind is slowed. Inside it, the fire can live. Inside it, children can sleep long enough to dream. Elders can rest near warmth. Tools can be repaired. Meat can dry. Stories can be spoken softly while darkness presses its face against the walls. And sometimes, in a world that asks so much of the body, a shelter that is only warm enough is the most beautiful thing imaginable. So let the present dim a little. Let the ceiling above you soften into hide and branch. Let the room around you become dark in a gentle way. You are not leaving safety. You are carrying safety with you into the story. The wind outside the ancient shelter may move. The snow may drift. The cold may press its patient hands against the wall. But you are listening from a protected place, and every time the story wanders outward into winter, it will come home again to the fire. The first thing to understand is this: warmth, in that old world, was not a possession. It was a practice. It was not something that simply existed once a shelter had been built. It had to be made again and again. It had to be guarded through the night, fed through the day, shared with care, and repaired wherever it began to escape. Warmth lived in habits, banking coals, drying grass, stitching seams, turning hides fur-side inward, choosing the right stones for heat, placing the old and the young where the fire could reach them. Warmth was a rhythm, and the rhythm had to be remembered. Now imagine that you are near the entrance. You bend your head and step through the low opening. The hide flap brushes your shoulder. For a moment, the outside light is behind you and the inside is only shadow. Then the hearth appears, not as a bright blaze, but as a red softness under ash. Shapes begin to form, a sleeping body wrapped in fur, a bundle of wood, a spear leaning along the stone wall, strips of meat hanging where smoke can touch them, a child's small foot visible beneath a hide. The air is thick with the smell of smoke, earth, animal skin, and human closeness. It is not clean, not fresh, not spacious, but it is held. The cold does not disappear when you enter. It changes character. Outside, it strikes. Inside, it waits. It lingers along the floor, gathers near the entrance, hides in the seams, and presses through the places where yesterday's repair has loosened. But near the hearth, the air is softer. Near the hearth, fingers can open. Near the hearth, the body begins to believe in morning. You wake before the sun. There is no alarm, no voice calling your name, only the old signal of cold on the face. It touches the bridge of your nose first, then the skin around your eyes, then the fingers that slipped out during sleep. For a while, you do not move in a winter shelter. Waking is gradual. The mind returns slowly because the body already knows what the day will ask. More wood, more repair, more watching, more careful use of everything. Around you, the others still sleep. Their breathing is a low, uneven tide. Someone coughs once, then settles. A child whimpers, and a hand reaches from under a fur to draw the child closer. The old woman nearest the hearth lies curled like a small bundle of shadow, wrapped in the thickest hide the group can spare. The warmest sleeping places are never random. They are given by need, by age, by usefulness, by affection, by quiet agreements made over many winters. To sleep near the fire is not only comfort, it is belonging. You open your eyes above you. The roof is dark, patched in layers. Poles run overhead, their ends wedged into cracks in the stone. Smaller branches cross them. Hides hang over the frame. And in places where the hides do not meet cleanly, moss and grass have been packed into the dark lines. Smoke has stained everything. Even the pale pieces have become brown and gray with time. The shelter remembers every fire. You sit up carefully. The hide around your shoulders falls open, and cold slips in at once, quick and clever. You pull the hide back, then shift toward the hearth. Your knees and back complain yesterday. You carried wood from the grove beyond the frozen stream. The day before that, you helped scrape a hide until your wrists ached. The body keeps account in ways no one needs to write down. At the hearth, ash covers the coals in a soft mound. This is one of the most important acts of the night before. Not putting the fire out, not letting it burn wild, but persuading it to sleep. Too much ash, and the coal suffocates. Too little, and it spends itself before dawn. The right covering is learned through watching, through failure, through mornings when someone brushed ash aside and found only gray death. Those mornings are remembered. They teach caution. You reach for a small stick and move the ash gently. A red eye opens beneath it. Alive. Still alive. The relief is quiet but deep. You place a curl of dry bark beside it, then a little grass, then twigs saved in a bundle near the wall. The driest materials are kept close to the hearth, guarded from damp breath and melting snow. You bend forward and breathe on the coal, slowly, as though speaking to something shy. Smoke rises, the bark blackens, a thread of flame lifts. Wavers and holds. Morning enters the shelter not through the door, but through that flame. The light grows by small degrees. It touches the nearest stones first. Then, the side of a sleeping face, then the curve of a hanging pouch, then the rough edge of a wooden bowl. Someone stirs. Someone murmurs. The child who whimpered earlier opens both eyes, sees fire, and becomes calm. Fire is not only heat, it is reassurance made visible. You feed the flame carefully. First twigs, then pieces no thicker than 2 fingers, then one larger branch, placed where it will catch without smothering what is still young. A fire in the morning must be raised like a living thing. It needs space to breathe. It needs patience. It needs someone willing to wait for the right moment. This is not dramatic work, but the whole day leans on it. Soon the shelter begins to change. Smoke rises more confidently toward the vent. The air near the hearth warms. A small ring of people forms without anyone deciding it. Hands come forward. Feet inch closer. The old woman is helped into a sitting position, still wrapped in fur. Her eyes remain half closed, but her palms turn toward the heat. The first warmth of morning belongs to the hands, because the hands must work. A piece of ice is placed into a hollowed stone near the edge of the hearth. It will melt slowly. No one expects it to hurry in this world. Water comes with labor. Snow must be gathered cleanly. Ice must be broken. Vessels must be warmed carefully so they do not crack. A drink is not merely taken. It is made. The melting ice sits there, clouded and pale, becoming water one drop at a time. Now the day begins its soft loop. Fire, water, wall, tool, food, bedding, fire again. Such loops are the true shape of winter. They may not sound exciting, but they are deeply comforting to a sleeping mind. The same tasks return, the same hands answer, the same small problems are noticed before they grow sharp teeth. You take a strip of dried meat and hold it near the heat. It softens slowly, fat wakes along its edge and shines. The smell moves through the shelter, and several heads turn. Hunger is always nearby in winter, but in this moment it is softened by warmth. A little food, taken slowly, can become a kind of peace. You chew carefully. Teeth are precious. Food is precious. Nothing is rushed. Across the hearth, someone lifts a spear and studies the binding near the point. The sinew has loosened in the cold. It must be tightened before the spear is trusted outside. Another person checks a stone blade, turning it in the firelight. A child sorts kindling into 3 piles. Dry, damp, and almost useless, but not to be thrown away yet. In a winter shelter, even almost useless things are given time to prove themselves. Then comes the listening. You crawl along the wall, moving your hand slowly over the seams. The skin on the back of the wrist is good for finding drafts. Eyes can miss what skin understands. Near the north side, just above the floor, the air is moving. Not much, but enough. A little thread of cold slips through where a hide has pulled away from the stones. If ignored, it will widen. If widened, it will steal heat all day. You call softly to another person, and together you repair it. The stone weight is moved. Moss is pressed into the gap. Clay is warmed near the shoe. Fire just enough to become workable, then pushed over the moss and smoothed. A strip of hide is drawn tighter and tight again. The repair is ugly, lumpy, and temporary, but it changes the air. The smoke rises straighter. The floor nearby feels less cruel. The room has become slightly more itself. That is how an ancient winter home is made. Not once, but continuously. Not once, but continuously. It is not finished when the frame is built. It is not finished when the hides are hung. It is not finished when the first fire burns. It is made every morning by the people who notice where it is failing and answer before night. Let this be soothing now. You can hear the rhythm. Brush the ash. Wake the coal. Warm the hands. Melt the ice. Patch the seam. Feed the flame. Breathe. Wait. Begin again. Outside the entrance, the light has grown stronger, though the sky remains gray. The firewood pile is lower than anyone would like. It always is, no matter how much wood is brought in. The fire eats through it patiently. Warmth has a weight, and the weight must be carried on someone's back. So you prepare to leave the shelter. First the feet. Dry grass is tucked inside the foot wrappings, because air trapped in grass helps hold warmth. Then the hide is folded around the foot and tied. The tie must be firm but not so tight that it stops blood from warming the toes. A second layer goes around the lower leg. A hood is pulled forward. A cloak of fur is wrapped across the chest. Everything overlaps. Clothing in this world is not a smooth garment, but a series of decisions against the wind. At the doorway you pause. Everyone knows this moment. Inside is smoke, closeness, dim light, and the fire you helped wake. Outside is brightness, space, and cold without sympathy. You lift the flap, and the wind enters instantly, running low across the floor. Someone near the hearth shifts a body to shield the flame. You duck out quickly and let the hide fall behind you. The cold outside feels almost solid. It touches the eyes until they water. It tightens the cheeks. It enters the nose so sharply that the first breath feels like drinking from stone. The world is larger out here, and much emptier behind you. The shelter becomes only a dark shape against the ridge. The smoke rising from it is thin, but to you, it is more meaningful than a banner. It says, "Return here, warmth is there, people are there." You begin walking toward the trees. There are not many trees. This is a cold landscape near the edge of what trees can easily bear. Some grow low and twisted. Some stand bare. Some have died and dried in place, which makes them valuable. The snow is shallow in some areas and drifted deep in others. Beneath it, stones wait to turn the ankle. You walk with the caution of someone who knows that a small injury in winter can become a large story. The journey for wood is not heroic. That is why it matters. It is ordinary. And ordinary work is what kept people alive. Later, ages would remember hunts and paintings and carved figures, but much of winter survival belonged to repeated, unglamorous labor. Bend, test the branch, break it if it is dry, leave it if it is wet, dig under snow, listen, look up, tie the bundle, carry it back. Do it again tomorrow, at the grove. The wind is softer, but not gone. You search beneath low branches where snow has not soaked everything. Dry wood has a different sound when knocked against another piece. It is lighter, sharper. Damp wood is dull and heavy. You collect bark that peels in curls, twigs that will wake a coal, and heavier branches that will burn longer once the fire is strong. You do not take only what is easiest. You take what the hearth will need at different hours. Your fingers stiffen. The cold does not take everything at once. First, it steals grace. Knots become harder. Small objects slip. The hand no longer closes exactly when asked. You stop and tuck your fingers under your arm, waiting for the ache of returning warmth. Pain comes back slowly, and though it is unpleasant, it is also reassuring. A numb hand is quiet in a dangerous way. In the snow, there are tracks, hare, fox, perhaps wolf farther out near the rise. You notice them, but do not follow. Tonight's story does not need to chase fear. The tracks are enough to remind us that the world outside the shelter is alive with other hungers. You gather your bundle and turn back toward the ridge. The return feels longer. The load pulls at your shoulder. The cord bites through layers. Your breath comes harder now, each cloud torn away by wind. The shelter smoke appears, disappears behind a low swell of land, then appears again. You keep your eyes on it. A smoke line in winter is a promise written in air. When you finally reach the entrance and duck inside, the warmth feels almost unreal. It is not truly warm, not by modern standards, but after the open wind, it is blessing enough. Your face stings as it thaws. Your fingers ache as blood returns. Someone takes the bundle from you. Someone else adds 3 pieces to the hearth, and the fire brightens as though pleased by your return. Here, we pause again in safety. You are not outside. You are not carrying wood. You are not cold. Let the story return you to the circle of fire. Let the ancient shelter receive you, and then let your own room receive you more deeply. This is the pulse of the whole journey. Out into winter, back to warmth. Out into effort, back to rest. Out into history, back to the body lying safely in the dark. The afternoon is for making the shelter more comfortable, though comfortable is a humble word here. It does not mean soft pillows or clean sheets. It means fewer drafts, drear bedding, a stronger wall, a fire that smokes less, a place where the old woman can sleep without waking from cold, a place where the children's feet stay warm enough that they do not cry in the deepest part of night. One person works on a hide. The skin has already been scraped, smoked, stretched, and softened, but it has stiffened again in the cold. It must be worked by hand, pulled back and forth over a smooth piece of wood, rubbed with fat flexed until it remembers how to bend. Hide is one of the great materials of this world. It is wall, blanket, clothing, door, bag, sling, and sometimes floor. To waste it would be almost unthinkable. The smell of hide work fills one side of the shelter. It is strong, smoky, animal, earthy. Modern comfort often tries to remove every smell, but ancient comfort was full of them. Smoke meant fire. Fat meant stored energy. Hide meant covering. Damp earth meant a sealed seam. The nose knew the house as much as the eyes did. Near the wall, Erin is studying the place repaired in the morning. She touches the clay, and frowns slightly. It will hold for tonight, but not for many nights. The wind is finding the north side too easily this season. Perhaps the outer snowbank needs to be raised. Perhaps a second layer of hide should be hung inside, leaving a small space of still air between the layers. Still air can be a secret blanket. Moving air steals. Still air keeps. Erin is not young, but she is not old in this world. Age is measured less by numbers than by winters carried in the body. She has strong hands, though the knuckles are thick from work. A scar crosses one wrist, where a stone flake cut her years ago. Her hair is tied back with a strip of leather. She speaks softly, not because she lacks authority, but because people listen before she needs to raise her voice. She knows shelter. More importantly, she knows that shelter is never only a thing. It is behavior. A good wall will fail if people lean tools badly against it. A good fire will smoke if someone blocks the draft. A dry bedding place will dampen if snow is carried in and left to melt. A warm night begins in the morning. Erin understands this. And because she understands, she is always watching. As a child, she learned by doing small tasks. She sorted grasses. She held cords. She gathered moss from the shaded side of stones. She was told which plants softened well and which crumbled. She learned that some clay sealed well, but cracked in bitter cold, while another clay mixed with plant fiber held longer. She learned that a hide stretched too tight could tear when frozen, and a hide hung too loose could flap all night and worry everyone awake. But she did more than remember. She compared. She noticed that one family's sleeping place stayed warmer than another's. She watched where smoke moved when the wind changed. She asked why snow sometimes helped a wall and sometimes made it wet. Not every question was answered. Some older people shrugged. Some told her to work instead of wondering. So she worked, and wondered while working. There had been a winter, many years before, when a storm came from the north and shook the shelter so hard that one wall opened in the night. Snow entered like thrown sand. The fire flattened. Children cried. People moved in darkness, pulling skins, lifting stones, coughing in smoke. No one died, but the memory remained. For Erin, that night became a teacher. She learned that a shelter should be prepared not for the usual wind, but for the wind that arrives when everyone is tired. Now she passes this knowledge to Luma, a younger person with quick eyes and impatient hands. Luma wants to know the right way to build a wall. Erin keeps showing her that there is no single right way. Only the way that answers this wind, this ground, this hide. She guides Luma's hand to a seam and says, "Feel before you look." She points to smoke and says, "Wait until it tells you where the air is going." She lifts 2 stones and lets Luma choose which will hold heat longer. The lesson is not a speech. It is a series of touches. Together they build a second inner hanging along the north side. It does not cover the whole wall. Materials are too limited for that. It covers the sleeping area where the children lie and where the old woman's feet face the cold. The hide is suspended slightly away from the outer wall. The lower edge is weighted lightly, not sealed, so moisture does not gather too heavily between the layers. Erin has learned that trapped air helps, but trapped dampness betrays. This is the beauty of practical wisdom. It is never pure theory. It carries the memory of mistakes. A wall once sealed too tightly became wet and cold. Fat once packed into a gap attracted small gnawing animals. A smoke hole once left open in a shifting wind filled the room with bitter smoke. Each failure became part of the next success. The new inner layer is not dramatic. No one cheers, but later, when the draft is weaker, people will sleep better without quite knowing why. Much of care is like that. It disappears into the comfort it creates. As evening approaches, more tasks fold into one another. A stone blade is resharpened with soft, precise taps. A child is shown how to hold dry grass away from sparks. Meat is moved higher into the smoke. A pouch is repaired. The old woman is helped to drink warm water, sip by sip. Outside, the gray day becomes blue, then darker blue, then something close to black. The shelter changes at night. During the day it is a workshop. Storage place, kitchen, repair room, and refuge. At night, it becomes a nest. Tools are moved away from feet. Wood is stacked within reach. The entrance flap is adjusted. Bedding is arranged in layers, grass below, hides above, fur inward where possible. Warm stones are wrapped and placed near the feet of those who need them most. The fire is fed for evening, not too much, but enough to create a generous light. Food is shared, not a feast, but enough to bring quiet to the stomach. A piece of meat softened by heat, a little marrow, rich and treasured. A root roasted until its hardness gives way. The taste is simple, but the body receives it with gratitude. Around the fire, faces loosen. Work has not ended, but the harshest edge of the day has passed. Someone begins a story. We cannot know the words, and it is better not to pretend we do. But we can imagine the tone, low, measured, familiar. Perhaps it is a story of an animal seen in summer, or of a river crossing, or of a person who once made everyone laugh during a hungry week. Perhaps it is not a story with a beginning and an end, but a memory told in pieces. A name, a gesture, a place, a lesson hidden inside an image. Firelight makes listeners. It gathers attention without demanding it. Children stare at the moving orange shapes until their eyes grow heavy. One leans against another and slowly folds into sleep. The old woman murmurs once, perhaps adding a detail, perhaps correcting the teller, perhaps speaking to someone only she remembers. No one minds. Memory has many doors. This is another kind of warmth. Not heat, but nearness. The heat from the hearth warms skin. The nearness of others warms the part of the mind that fears being alone. In deep winter, both are needed. A person can be fed and still be lonely. A person can be near flame and still tremble if no one notices them. The shelter holds bodies, but the group holds persons. Let the middle of the video become very slow here. There is no need to hurry through this night. The wind outside is steady. The wall holds. The fire shifts and settles. Sparks rise and vanish. A hand reaches for a piece of wood. A child sighs. Someone pulls a hide higher over a sleeping shoulder. The smell of smoke thickens, then thins as the draft changes. Aaron looks up, listens, and relaxes. The smoke is moving correctly. Later, the story fades, words become fewer. People enter the old silence that comes before sleep. It is not empty silence. It is full of shared breathing. The fire is no longer a bright blaze. It has become a red and gold bed of coals. The largest pieces collapse inward, sending up a brief glow. The stones around the hearth hold heat in their dark bodies. Before sleep, the fire must be banked. Aaron and Luma do it together. They draw ash gently around the coals, not covering everything, not leaving everything open. A few small pieces of wood are placed where they will catch slowly. The goal is to let the fire dream until morning. Luma watches closely. Tomorrow, or the next winter, or many winters from now, she may be the one who wakes first and searches beneath ash for the red sign of survival. One by one, bodies settle. The children are closest to the protected warmth. The old woman lies near the hearth, her face softened by firelight. Adults form outer layers, not formally, not by command, but by habit and need. A winter sleeping arrangement is a map of care. It shows who must be guarded, who can endure more cold, who may need to rise in the night, who should be near the tools, who should be near the door. Outside, the night is enormous. Inside, the shelter is small. That smallness is part of its comfort. The roof is low enough to hold heat. The walls are near enough to define the circle. The darkness beyond the fire does not feel empty, only folded. The whole place seems to breathe with the sleepers. Before the story moves outward into the far future, let us stay a little longer with the kinds of quiet details that make an ancient shelter feel lived in. Because sleep often comes not from the largest ideas, but from the smallest repeated images. A hand smoothing ash, a hide being folded, a child turning toward warmth, a stone giving back the heat it borrowed from the fire. These things do not hurry the mind. They give it places to rest. In the deepest part of winter, the shelter has a morning smell, an afternoon smell, and a night smell. In the morning, it smells of ash opened after sleep, of smoke waking slowly, of cold hides beginning to warm again. The air is sharp near the entrance and thick near the hearth. Breath clouds briefly in the dimness until the fire gains strength. In the afternoon, the smell changes. There is damp clay from repairs, scraped hide, warmed fat, thawing water, and the woody scent of fresh fuel brought in from outside. At night, when bodies have gathered and the fire has lowered, the smell becomes deeper and softer, smoke folded into fur, food into bedding, earth into warmth. None of it would seem clean to a modern person, but to those who live there, it means enclosure. It means the shelter has held another day. The floor, too, tells its own slow story. It is not flat like a modern floor. It has slight hollows where people sit often, firmer areas where feet pass again and again, softer bedding places where grass has been renewed. Near the hearth, the earth is baked hard and dry. Farther away, near the wall, it can be cold enough to make the bones of the foot ache if the bedding is too thin. Small things disappear into this floor. Flakes of stone, seeds, bits of burned bone, fragments of cord, hair, ash, the dust of many tasks. Later, these tiny things will matter. For now, they are simply part of living. When the day is too harsh for long travel, people remain inside for many hours. And the shelter must hold not only bodies but moods. Tiredness can make a small place feel smaller. Hunger can sharpen a voice. Smoke can irritate the eyes. A child can grow restless and knock over a bundle of kindling. Someone can step on a tool and crack it. In such moments, the peace of the shelter is also something maintained. A joke spoken at the right time. A task given to restless hands. A story begun before irritation hardens. A warm drink passed quietly. These are not separate from survival. They are part of it. Erin knows this as well as she knows the walls. She watches people the way she watches smoke. Not with suspicion, but with attention. If the old woman grows too quiet, Erin brings water. If Luma becomes frustrated with a stitch, Erin lets her stop and sort grass for a while. If two tired hunters return with little food and heavy faces, Erin shifts the work around them, giving their bodies time to come back into the shelter before anyone asks for more. Warmth is not only fire management, it is human management, done gently, without naming it. On some afternoons, when the wind outside is too strong and snow moves in long, low sheets across the ground, the shelter becomes a world entire. The entrance flap lifts and falls, never fully opening. Light comes through it in pale pulses. The fire is kept moderate, because too much smoke would gather if the vent behaves poorly in shifting wind. People work close to the ground, where the air is a little clearer. A child lies on a fur and watches shadows move overhead. To that child, the roof of hide and branch may seem as large and mysterious as the night sky. There are tools hanging above, each with a place, a scraper polished by use, a bone awl, a small blade wrapped in hide so its edge will not cut a hand in the dark, a cord made from twisted sinew, a pouch holding dry tinder, a second pouch holding ochre, perhaps for marking, perhaps for ritual, perhaps simply because color mattered even then. The ancient world was not only practical, even in hardship. People noticed beauty. A smooth stone could be kept because it felt good in the hand. A shell could travel far from water and remain precious. A line of red on skin or hide could mean belonging, memory, protection, or something we cannot now translate. But tonight, beauty is quiet. It is the amber shine of fat near the fire. It is the silver edge of frost seen when the entrance opens. It is the dark curve of a sleeping child's hair. It is the way smoke catches light before it disappears into the roof. It is the low murmur of voices that do not need to be fully understood. The listener only needs to feel that people are near, that the shelter is alive, that nothing urgent is being demanded. Sometimes, when the weather eases, work moves outside just beyond the entrance. This is a threshold space, neither fully in the cold, nor fully in the home. Here, hides may be shaken free of ash. Snow may be brushed from boots and leggings before entering. Wood may be broken into smaller pieces. Bones may be cracked where the mess can be managed. Children may be allowed to step out and back again, learning the boundary between exposure and safety. The threshold teaches, it says, outside is not forbidden, but it must be respected. Inside is not effortless, but it must be protected. The entrance itself is one of the most important parts of the shelter. Too large, and the warmth escapes. Too small, and carrying wood becomes difficult. Smoke behaves badly, and people struggle to move quickly when needed. Too high, and wind enters directly. Too low, and everyone must bend, which is inconvenient but useful, because bending slows the exchange between inside and outside. A low entrance asks every person to make a small gesture of humility before entering warm. Bow your head, step carefully, bring less snow with you. Leave the force of the wind behind. Inside, the roof holds more than weather out. It holds sound in. A low roof makes voices softer. It makes the fire feel nearer. It turns the shelter into an instrument, catching the small noises of evening and returning them as comfort. The scrape of a tool, the tug of thread through hide, the crackle of a twig, the slow breath of sleepers. These sounds repeat until the mind no longer needs to follow them. They become like rain, like a lullaby made from work. In one corner, Luma practices stitching on a scrap too worn for important repairs. Aaron has given it to her because mistakes must happen somewhere. The girl pushes the bone needle through the hide with effort, pulls the sinew, then frowns when the seam puckers badly. Aaron does not take it away. She lets Luma see what the mistake has made. A tight seam can tear, a loose seam can leak, a good seam has firmness and give. This is true of shelters, and perhaps of people too, though no one says it that way. Luma tries again. The second line is better, not perfect, but better. Her shoulders relax nearby. The old woman watches through half-closed eyes. Perhaps she remembers her own first crooked seam. Perhaps she remembers teaching Aaron in the same way. Knowledge here does not pass in a straight line. It circles, it repeats, it returns when the learner becomes the teacher, and the teacher becomes the one warmed by younger hands. The old woman's memory is one of the shelter's invisible stores. She remembers a winter when the group used a different valley, where the wind came hard from the west, but wood was plentiful. She remembers a cave that smoked badly unless the fire was placed far to one side. She remembers which berries dried well, and which turned bitter. She remembers a child who survived because someone wrapped warm stones near his feet for many nights. Her body is frail, but her memory is a kind of stored heat. This is why she sleeps close to the hearth, not only because she needs warmth, but because the group needs what she carries. In modern life, it is easy to separate comfort from knowledge. We press a button and warmth arrives. We turn a handle and water flows. We do not need to know the path of the wind around our walls. But in that ancient shelter, comfort is knowledge made visible. The warmest sleeping place is knowledge. The smoke hole is knowledge. The dry tinder bundle is knowledge. The way people take turns waking in the night is knowledge. The home is a memory system built from materials. Let this thought become slow and soft. A home is a memory system. It remembers where the wind came in. It remembers which stones cracked. It remembers whose feet grew cold. It remembers the storm that nearly lifted the wall. It remembers the morning when the fire failed, and everyone learned to bank the ash differently. The shelter holds these lessons not in writing, but in arrangement. This hide here, that stone there, tinder kept high, dry grass, stored away from the entrance, elders near the hearth. Children between warm bodies. When archaeologists much later find the traces of such places, they are finding the remains of memory. A hearth used again and again is memory. A repaired floor is memory. A post replaced in the same hole is memory. A wall line strengthened over time is memory. The earth does not preserve the reasons clearly, but the repetition suggests them. People returned because the place worked. They rebuilt because it mattered. They changed details because experience had taught them. Some shelters may have been used only briefly. A few nights during a hunt. A temporary windbreak. A small hearth under an overhang. Others were returned to season after season in those places. The ground itself became layered with human presence. Ash over soil, soil over ash, new fire over old fire. A person might sleep above the faint remains of someone who slept there years before, perhaps a relative, perhaps a person only remembered in stories. Time accumulated under the body. Imagine sleeping in a place where your people have slept before. Not in a house inherited with walls still standing, but in a landscape inherited through use. The ridge is known, the path to water is known, The grove where dead wood can be found is known. The place where snow drifts dangerously is known. The stone that marks the return route in low visibility is known. Home is not only the shelter, home is the remembered pattern around it. The winter landscape has its own rooms, the grove for wood, the sheltered hollow for butchering out of the wind, the rise where one can look for moving animals, the stream under ice, the place where moss grows thickest, the bank where snow can be cut and carried, the overhang where tools are stored briefly when hands are full. Each place has a use, a mood, a danger, a memory. The shelter is the center, but the home extends outward through knowledge. On a calm day, the group may send 2 people farther out to check traps or gather materials. Those who remain tend the fire, process hides, repair tools, watch children, and conserve strength. The day's rhythm is shaped by weather. If the sky is bright and the wind low, more is done outside. If the air turns sharp and heavy, tasks pull inward. Ancient life required this flexibility. Plans were not made against nature, but with constant attention to it. Weather was read in small signs, the color of clouds, the way smoke rose or flattened, the feeling of pressure in the bones, perhaps the behavior of animals. The sound of snow underfoot. Dry powder meant one thing, wet heavy snow meant another. A crust on the surface could help walking or cut the legs. Wind from one direction might be manageable. Wind from another might turn a good shelter smoky. These observations were not hobbies, they were protection. And after every outward movement, there was return. Return is one of the most soothing shapes in a sleep story. The mind can wander because it knows it will come back. Back to the entrance, back to the fire, back to the familiar smell of smoke and hide, back to the circle of people, back to the low roof that holds the night away, back to the phrase that keeps repeating beneath everything. The wall holds, the fire holds, the warmth remains. Now imagine one long evening after a day of gentle snow. Not a storm, not danger, just snow falling steadily enough to soften the world. Outside the shelter, edges blur, stones become rounded. Old tracks disappear, the ridge grows quiet, snow gathers against the banked wall, and for once helps more than it threatens. It blocks small drafts near the ground, it muffles the wind, it makes the outside world feel farther away. Inside, the firelight is golden. The roof is low and dark. The inner wall hanging on the north side moves only slightly now, because the snow outside has calmed the air. Luma notices this, and looks toward Aaron, proud without speaking. Aaron nods once. The nod is small, but Luma receives it like warmth. Recognition, in a hard world, is also fuel. The old woman begins to hum, not a song as we would write it, perhaps not even a melody with a clear shape, but a low repeated sound. It rises and falls with her breath. A child listens, then closes his eyes. The hum does not tell a story. It makes a place for sleep to arrive. Other voices remain quiet so as not to disturb it. Even the fire seems to settle around the sound. This kind of moment leaves almost nothing for archaeology. A hum does not fossilize. A nod does not remain in the soil. The feeling of being praised by someone you respect leaves no charcoal. Yet such things were part of the shelter's warmth. If we speak only of tools and bones, we miss the soft center. The past was made of relationships as surely as it was made of stone. Perhaps Erin has known loss. Almost certainly she has. Every ancient life did. A winter illness, a failed hunt, a child who did not grow. A storm that arrived too soon. But tonight, we do not need to enter grief deeply. We can acknowledge it at the doorway and return to the fire. Sleep content should not deny hardship, but it should not trap the listener inside it. The tenderness is stronger when the danger remains distant and the care remains close. So the grief becomes only another reason the fire is tended. Those who have known cold become careful with warmth. Those who have seen a wall fail learn to check the seams. Those who have lost someone to winter move a child closer to the hearth without needing to explain why. Memory becomes protection. Love becomes habit. The night deepens. The hum fades. The old woman sleeps. Luma's unfinished practice seam lies beside her hand. Erin checks it before lying down and sees that the last few stitches improve. She covers the scrap with a small piece of hide, so it will not be lost in the bedding. tomorrow, Lumo will find it again. Tomorrow, the lesson will continue. In another part of the shelter, a hunter dreams with one hand near his spear. Not because danger is expected, but because tools become extensions of the sleeping body. A gatherer sleeps near a pouch of dried roots. A child sleeps with a small smooth stone held in the fist, warmed by the hand. The old woman sleeps with her face turned toward the hearth. The fire is low enough now that shadows no longer leap. They only breathe. Let us look once more at the hearth before the story moves toward its deeper quiet. The hearth is not merely a circle of fire. It is layered with use. Ash from many nights has been cleared and spread. Some ash may be saved for practical purposes. Mixed, rubbed, used in cleaning or processing. Charcoal pieces are moved, selected, sometimes carried to start fire elsewhere. The stones around the hearth have been shifted over time until their arrangement suits the shelter. Each stone has a history of heat. A heated stone is a modest technology, but a beautiful one. It does not blaze. It does not demand attention. It absorbs warmth slowly and returns it slowly. It can be placed near bedding, used to warm water indirectly, or held near chilled hands if wrapped properly. It teaches patience because it cannot be rushed. Put it too suddenly into cold water and it may crack. Heat the wrong stone and it may split. Choose well. Warm slowly. Use gently. The lesson sounds almost like a way of living. Water, too, has its winter rituals. Snow is abundant, but snow is mostly air. A great bowl of snow becomes a little water. Ice gives more, but must be broken, carried, melted. Drinking cold water can chill the body, so water is warmed when possible. A warm sip in winter can feel like kindness traveling inward. It reaches the throat, the chest, the belly. It reminds the body that heat does not only come from outside. Food is treated with the same care. Meat may be smoked, dried, roasted, softened, shared. Fat is treasured because it burns in the body like stored sunlight. Marrow is precious, hidden inside bone until cracked open. Roots and seeds, when available, add variety and memory of warmer seasons. Nothing is casual. A small portion eaten slowly near a fire can be more comforting than abundance eaten without attention. There is a sleepy satisfaction in the order of these tasks. Warm the water, turn the meat, move the stone, fold the hide, check the wall, bank the fire. These phrases can repeat without becoming boring because they belong to the body's need for rhythm. Sleep itself is rhythmic, breath, heartbeat, waves of thought fading and returning. A good bedtime history story should behave like that. It should move, return, until the listener no longer needs to follow every word. So if some words begin to blur now, that is all right. Let them blur into smoke, into fur, into low firelight. Let the story become a shelter of its own. You are hearing about ancient people building warmth, while the telling builds a quieter warmth around you. The subject and the sound begin to match cold outside. Warmth inside, thought outside, rest inside. Now much later, after countless nights like this have vanished, what remains? The bodies are gone. The hides are gone, the cords of sinew are gone. The smoke has thinned into memory, but the earth keeps what it can. Imagine now that time passes over the shelter like snow. Winter loosens into spring. The group moves when the season asks them to move. Useful hides are taken, tools are carried, wood may be reused. Broken scraps are left behind. Ash cools, rain enters, grass grows where feet once pressed the floor. Animals nose through the old place. A year passes, then many. The shape collapses, the ridge remains. Centuries pass, then millennia. The shelter is no longer a shelter, it is a layer. A darker patch in soil, a scatter of charcoal, a line of stones that seems almost natural until someone notices the spacing. A hollow where a post once stood, burned bone fragments, stone flakes, reddened earth beneath an old hearth. The warmth itself is gone, but its shadow remains. An archaeologist kneels there with careful tools, not rushing, brushing soil away a little at a time. The hearth appears first as a change in color. Black, gray, white, red, brown, ash, and charcoal layered together. Each layer may hold a different fire, a different occupation, a different winter return. The archaeologist does not hear the child sigh or smell the fresh smoke, but the pattern says people came back. People use this place. People made flame here more than once. Charcoal can sometimes reveal what wood was burned. Tiny plant remains can speak of nearby landscapes. Burned bone can reveal meals. Animals hunted or scavenged. Marrow extracted. Fat rendered. Food shared. Stone flakes around the hearth can show where tools were repaired in firelight. Larger stones cracked by heat can suggest repeated use. Maybe even the deliberate warming of stones to hold heat after flames lowered. Post holes are especially gentle evidence. They are absences made visible. A wooden pole stood there once, then rotted away, leaving darker soil. One hole alone may mean little. A pattern of holes can sketch a vanished frame. From such marks, researchers can imagine the line of a wall, the curve of a roof, the size of an entrance. They do not recover the home whole. They recover the grammar of its making. Along the edge, stones might have weighted hides. Their placement suggests a perimeter. If some are smooth or worn in particular ways, they may have held cords or rubbed against skins. A scatter of small objects near one area might suggest a working place. A cleaner area. Near a wall might suggest sleeping. Nothing is certain in the way a living room is certain when you stand inside it. But the clues lean toward one another. This is how archaeology becomes a whisper rather than a shout. It does not say, "Here's exactly what happened." It says, "Someone tended fire here. Someone sat here long enough to leave flakes of stone. Someone cracked bones here for food. Something stood here and blocked the wind." The whisper is enough. In rare places, where cold, dryness, where cold, where special conditions preserve what usually disappears, fragments of the soft world survive. Bits of leather, plant fiber, cordage, wooden tools, even these fragments are often small, but they are deeply intimate. A stitch in leather can feel closer than a monument. It shows the path of a hand. It shows that someone solved a problem not in theory, but in material. Pull the edge here, overlap there. Make the seam resist wind. Let the hide bend where the body bends, most of the time. However, we must imagine the soft world from hard traces. This requires humility. We should not claim too much. There were many kinds of Ice Age shelters, shaped by region, season, available materials, and tradition. A cave shelter in limestone country was not the same as a hide tent on open tundra. A mammoth bone structure in a treeless landscape was not the same as a brush windbreak near a river valley. But beneath the differences, the same ancient question returns. How do we make a small warm pocket in a large cold world? Let that question rest with you. How do we make a small warm pocket in a large cold world? It is a prehistoric question, and it is also a human question that never really left us. A blanket answers it. A cup of warm tea answers it. A lamp beside a bed answers it. A quiet voice telling a slow story in the dark answers it. Across the Ice Age world, people answered with what they had. In some places, they used caves and overhangs, letting stone provide a back and roof, while they closed the open side with hide, brush, or built walls. In other places, they raised frames from wood and covered them with skins. Where wood was scarce, large bones could become supports. Heavy and strange to modern eyes, but practical in a landscape where the remains of great animals were among the strongest materials available. Snow could be banked outside, grass could be dried for bedding, moss could seal gaps, stones could store heat, smoke could preserve meat and drive away some insects in warmer seasons. Every material had more than one life. A good shelter was placed with care, not too exposed, not where water would run through it in thaw, not where smoke would blow back constantly, near enough to fuel if possible, near enough to food roots, water, stone, and safety. The people who built these homes were reading the land as carefully as any builder reads a plan. The slope of ground, the direction of wind, the strength of a branch, the dryness of moss, the shape of a rock wall, all mattered. And always, there was the fire. The hearth was the center, but not always exactly in the center. Sometimes it was placed near a stone wall, so the rock could absorb and return heat. Sometimes stones ringed it to hold coals and reflect warmth. Sometimes there were multiple hearths, perhaps for different tasks or different groups within the shelter. The hearth was kitchen, lamp, heater, tool workshop, gathering place, and memory circle. To understand the hearth is to understand the home's heart. But even the hearth needed social wisdom. Too much smoke could make people sick. Too little ventilation could be dangerous. Too open a vent could let the wind steal heat or push smoke downward. So people learned the delicate balance between breathing and retaining warmth. They adjusted openings. They shifted hides. They learned from the behavior of smoke. In a world without written diagrams, smoke itself became the teacher. Now return again, softly, to Aaron's shelter. The archaeologist fades. The soil becomes floor again. The post holes rise into poles. The ash becomes living coal. The cold ridge becomes night. We are back inside, where people are sleeping. Aaron wakes sometime after midnight. She does not know the hour. There is only the feel of the night. Something has changed. Not enough to alarm her, only enough to bring her eyes open. The wind has shifted. The entrance flap moves differently. The smoke smell is slightly stronger. She lies still and listens. A less experienced person might go back to sleep. Aaron rises. She moves carefully through the shelter, placing her feet where she knows the floor is clear. She touches the north wall first, cold, but not moving. Good. She checks the inner hanging, dry enough. Good. Near the entrance, the lower edge has lifted slightly where a stone rolled inward. She crouches, moves the stone back, and presses the hide down. The wind sound changes, smaller now at the hearth. The ash is still warm. She opens a small place with a stick and sees red. Good. She adds one slender piece of wood, just enough to keep the coals from fading too far. Flame is not needed. A glow is enough. The whole shelter is built around enough. For a few moments, she remains awake beside the hearth. Her face is lit from below by the hidden red. She looks older in this light, then younger, then simply human. Around her are the results of the day. The repaired seam, the new inner hanging, the stacked wood, the drying meat, the sleeping bodies. None of it is perfect. All of it is temporary, but tonight it holds. Perhaps this is the deepest comfort in the story. Not that our ancestors conquered winter. They did not. Not that they lived in harmony without fear. They did not. The comfort is that they answered what they could answer. They made small improvements. They shared warmth. They kept watch. They learned. They failed and tried. Again, they turned survival into skill, and skill into tradition, and tradition into the invisible foundation beneath later homes. Aaron lies down again. Luma sleeps near the wall she helped hang. The old woman breathes steadily. The children are still. The fire glows under ash. The wind moves outside. The wall holds. This phrase can stay with you now. The wall holds. It does not need to be perfect. It only needs to hold for this night. The fire holds. The group holds. The breath holds its slow rhythm. The warmth remains, long after Aaron is gone. Long after Luma teaches someone else. Long after the shelter is abandoned and buried. The pattern continues. People everywhere keep making warm pockets in cold worlds. They build with stone, mud, wood, reed, brick, snow, bone, cloth, concrete, memory, and hope. They gather around hearths, stoves, lamps, tables, screens, and stories. The materials change. The longing remains. Every warm room is a descendant of an ancient fire. Every bed is related, however distantly, to grass laid under hide on frozen ground. Every curtain that blocks a draft belongs to the same family as a stitched skin weighted with stones. Every morning when heat returns to a room, it echoes the old relief of finding a coal still alive under ash. You do not need to think about all of this sharply. Let it blur. Let history become atmosphere. Let the facts loosen into images. A ridge of stone, a low entrance, a smoky roof, a circle of sleepers, a woman listening to wind, a child sorting twigs, a warm stone wrapped in hide. A coal waiting patiently for dawn. The story does not need a hard ending, because the old work never truly ended. Somewhere in memory, the shelter remains. The fire lowers. The wind travels over the plain. Snow gathers softly along the outer wall, helping now, insulating what it once threatened. Inside, the sleepers turn in their furs. One hand reaches out and finds another. The contact lasts only a moment, then both hands relax. If there is one final image to carry into sleep, let it be very small. Not a grand invention, not the first house, not the whole ice age, just a hand in the dark, pulling a hide a little higher over someone who has grown cold. That is enough. That may be where home begins, in the quiet decision that another body should be warm too. The fire breathes lower. The ash softens its light. No one speaks now. The shelter is nearly dark, but not empty. It is full of held warmth, held breath, held memory. Morning will come when it comes. Someone will wake before the sun. Someone will brush ash aside, somewhere beneath the gray. Red will answer red. For now the people sleep. The wind moves, the wall holds, the warmth remains, and you can rest, but before everything disappears into sleep, there is one more gentle way to look at this old winter home. Imagine it not as a single place, but as a breathing pattern stretched across generations. In one winter, Aaron wakes to tend the fire. In another winter, many years later, Luma wakes with the same careful movement. In another place, far across the cold land, another person whose name we will never know presses moss into a scene, warms a stone, teaches a child to listen to smoke. The details shift, the rhythm remains, wake the coal, feed the flame. Mend the wall, share the heat, sleep close, begin again. This rhythm may have traveled farther than any one person. A group, moving along a river valley, might carry with them not only tools and hides, but habits. How to pitch a shelter with the entrance turned away from the prevailing wind. How to leave a small smoke path open even when the air outside is bitter. How to stack wood so the driest pieces do not touch the ground. How to place bedding over brush first, then grass, then hide. So the cold earth has more layers to climb before it reaches the body. Such knowledge is light enough to carry because it lives in practice. It rides in the hands, and the hands teach. A child sees where the dry tinder is kept, and later puts it there without being told. A young person watches an elder reject one stone and choose another, then learns by the sound of cracking which stones cannot be trusted near heat. Someone notices that smoke behaves differently when the entrance flap is tied slightly higher. Someone remembers, this is how human comfort grows in a world without notebooks. Not through sudden perfection, but through countless small acts of noticing. Imagine the shelter during a mild hour after several days of hard cold. The wind has dropped. The outside world is still, almost listening. A little more light enters through the doorway, and for once the entrance flap can be opened wider without punishment. The interior brightens. People blink in the pale glow. A hide is taken down briefly and shaken outside. Bedding is lifted and aired. Damp edges are turned toward the fire. Children are sent to gather bits of dry grass from a protected hollow nearby. Each small bundle carried with the seriousness of treasure. The shelter exhales. Smoke leaves more easily. The old woman smiles at the clearer air. Luma laughs quietly when a child returns with grass tangled in his hair. Aaron allows the door to remain open a little longer, watching the smoke, judging the wind, measuring comfort against risk. In a winter like this, even a few minutes of fresh light can feel like abundance. The shelter is not only a defense against the world. Sometimes, it opens to the world and lets a gentler version of it in. On such a day, tools may be brought closer to the doorway, where light is better. A blade can be retouched with more accuracy. A bone needle can be smoothed. A torn edge can be seen clearly enough to stitch without straining the eyes. Work done in good light saves mistakes made in firelight. Ancient people knew the value of timing. Some tasks belonged to morning, some to dusk, some to storm days, some to the rare still hour when winter loosened. Its grip and the shelter could be improved without urgency. The making of comfort often happened in these pauses, not when danger was loud, but when danger was quiet enough to prepare for its return. Extra moss gathered before the wall opened. Extra tinder dried before the fire failed. A second cord twisted before the first one broke. A better sleeping layer arranged before the child began to shiver. This is a restful idea, if you let it be. Care is not always dramatic. Very often, care is preparation performed in calm. The people in the shelter may not have thought of themselves as inventors. They were simply solving the next problem. Yet from these solutions came the deep history of domestic life. A windbreak becomes a wall. A repeated hearth becomes a room center. A sleeping place becomes a bed. A storage niche becomes a shelf. A smoke-darkened roof becomes a memory of all the fires before. The future does not arrive all at once. It gathers in ordinary gestures. As the mild hour fades, the entrance flap is lowered again. The outside light narrows, the shelter closes around its people, and the fire returns to being the main sun. The newly aired hides smell colder for a while, then warmer as they absorb the room again. Grass is tucked under bedding, a damp corner is moved. A child is praised for bringing dry stems instead of wet ones. The praise is small, but it teaches the child what kind of noticing matters. Now, let the story widen across the land once more, but slowly, as if you were floating above the ancient winter without leaving the warmth behind. In one valley, a group uses a cave mouth and builds a low wall of stone across part of the entrance. In another place, people bend branches into a rounded frame and cover it with hides, sewn edge to edge. Farther east, where the open land offers fewer trees, large bones help form the base of a dwelling, heavy curves set into the earth and covered with skins. Near a river, a temporary shelter is built quickly for a few nights, then taken apart when the group moves on. Each shelter is different. Each is a local answer to the same quiet question: what does the wind do here? Where does the sun touch the ground? Where will smoke go? Where can water be found? What can be carried? What must be left? What can be repaired? What can be trusted in the dark? These questions are as practical as breath, yet they are also the beginning of architecture. Long before walls were drawn on tablets, people were studying space with their bodies. They knew the difference between a place that merely covered the head and a place that helped the body sleep. They knew that a low roof might hold heat, that a back wall of stone might reduce wind, that a doorway placed poorly could ruin a night, that a sleeping body loses warmth to the ground as surely as to the air. They learned because the lesson mattered. If a shelter was too smoky, eyes burned and lungs struggled. If it was too open, heat vanished. If the roof was too weak, snow could press it down. If hides touched damp ground, they could freeze or rot. If bedding was not renewed, cold rose through it. Every detail carried consequence, and yet the result, when it worked, could be gentle. A space where the body stopped bracing, a space where hands could become useful again, a space where speech could soften. There is something deeply calming about useful space. A place for dry wood, a place for tools, a place for the old woman's bedding, a place where children know to sit when sparks rise, a place near the entrance for snowy outer wrappings, a place high above the ground for tinder, a place just outside for bones and mess. Order reduces fear. In a small shelter, order is another form of warmth. This does not mean the shelter was tidy by modern standards. It was likely crowded with objects, smells, textures, and sounds, but it had an order known to those who lived there. In darkness, a hand could reach for the tinder pouch. In smoke, a person could find the water vessel during a storm. Repair materials could be gathered quickly. Familiar disorder is still familiarity. It lets the body move without waking the whole mind. As you listen, you may notice how often the story returns to hands. That is because hands are everywhere in the evidence, even when no handprint remains. Hands cut, scraped, tied, carried, warmed, soothed, lifted, pressed, tested, and covered. Hands turned raw and cold and were warmed again near coals. Hands taught other hands. The history of cozy winter homes is not only a history of shelters. It is a history of touch. Touch tells whether hide is damp. Touch tells whether clay has dried enough. Touch tells whether a stone is too hot to move. Touch tells whether a child is cold. Touch tells whether a draft is passing through a seam. Touch tells whether a cord is fraying. Touch tells whether a blade is sharp. In a world with few artificial signals, the body itself is an instrument. The people who survived winter learned to trust that instrument, and when touch failed, they used smell, sound, sight, memory. The smell of smoke turning bitter, the sound of hide flapping too freely, the sight of flame leaning in the wrong direction, the memory of last winter's storm. The body was not separate from knowledge. It was knowledge. Let that be a soft thought too. Your own body knows comfort before your mind explains it. It knows the feeling of a blanket settling. It knows the quiet of a safe room. It knows when a voice has become slow enough to stop demanding attention. It knows warmth. In that way, the distance between you and the ancient shelter is not as great as it seems. The materials have changed. The nervous system still understands the old language. Now the shelter is late in the night again. Snow outside has stopped falling. The air is very still. The silence after snow is different from the silence before it. Softer, thicker, the world seems wrapped. Inside, the fire is banked so low that only a faint red seam shows beneath ash. Every so often, a coal shifts, and the red brightens, then dulls. A sleeper turns, fur whispers against hide. Someone exhales in a long, slow breath. Aaron dreams, perhaps, of a warmer season. Not summer as a paradise, but a time of more movement, more light, more plants, more choices. She may dream of gathering bark while it peels easily from a tree. She may dream of drying grass under a mild sun. She may dream of children running farther from the shelter, because the air no longer punishes every exposed finger. Winter dreams often contain warmth, just as summer work often prepares for cold. The old woman may dream of a place she knew as a child. A different ridge, a river bend, a fire tended by people whose faces are gone now, except inside her. Luma may dream of the seam she practiced, the needle passing through, the line becoming straighter. A child may dream of the smooth stone in his fist, transformed into something bright and secret. We cannot know, but sleep itself is part of survival. The shelter protects not only waking labor, but dreaming life. Outside, under the snow, roots wait, seeds wait. Burrowing animals sleep in their own hidden shelters. The world is full of small warm pockets, a fox curled in a den, birds pressed into sheltered branches, people beneath hide and stone. Winter is immense, but life answers it in many little circles of heat. This image can deepen the restfulness of the story. The human shelter is not alone in the dark. It belongs to a larger pattern of creatures finding ways through cold. Yet the human answer is special because it is shared through teaching. The fox knows by instinct and experience. The human knows by instinct, experience, memory, imitation, correction, and story. Around the hearth, survival becomes culture. Culture, at first, may look like a song, a tool shape, a way to cut meat, a way to honor the dead, a way to hang hides, a way to divide sleeping places. It may look like a child learning that tinder must be kept dry. It may look like laughter after a difficult day. It may look like Erin tapping Luma's wrist gently to show her how not to pull a stitch too tight. Culture is not only ceremony, it is the repeated way a group keeps itself alive. In this sense, the cozy winter shelter is one of humanity's oldest classrooms. What? The lessons are not written on walls. They are built into routine. Children learn where to sit, how to move around fire, what smoke means, what dry wood sounds like, how to respect sharp tools, how to share warmth, how to wait. Waiting is a lesson too. Waiting for ice to melt, waiting for hide to dry, waiting for a cold to catch, waiting for the weather to ease. Waiting teaches the mind not to panic when the world moves slowly. Modern life often pulls the mind toward speed. Ancient winter pulled the body toward patience. This is one reason the story can help you rest. It invites the mind into a slower time, where many good things happen gradually. A coal becomes flame. Snow becomes water. Hide becomes shelter. A child becomes skill. A cold place becomes bearable. Breath by breath, the night passes. And now, if the listener is already drifting, let the next images arrive like slow sparks rather than firm ideas. The bark curls, the ash falls, the stone warms, the hide softens, the seam closes, the smoke rises, the snow thickens, the child sleeps. The elder breathes, the fire holds, the wall holds, the warmth remains in the morning. When the first gray light returns, the shelter will wake again. Not all at once. First one person will stir, perhaps Erin, perhaps Luma, perhaps someone else whose name we have not given. A hand will reach from under a fur. The air will be cold on the knuckles. A shoulder will rise. A knee will press into the floor. Ash will be brushed aside. Everyone will wait without seeming to wait. If the coal is alive, The day begins with relief, if it is weak. More patience is needed, if it is gone. Then harder work begins, but tonight, let it be alive. Let the red return, let the bark catch. Let the first flame appear, let the room slowly become visible. Sleeping forms, tools, hides, steam from melting ice, smoke finding its path. Let the same gentle miracle happen again. This repetition is not boring in the old world. It is the desired outcome, to wake and do again what worked yesterday is a blessing. To have another morning, another fire, another chance to mend. Gather, teach, and rest is enough. Great histories often move from event to event, but bedtime history can honor the repeating day. The repeated day is where most human life actually lived, so the ancient shelter remains in the mind as a place of repetition. It does not need a single climax. It has cycles instead, day and night, cold and warmth, work and rest, outside and inside. Forgetting and remembering, fire bright, fire low, fire hidden, fire bright again. These cycles are older than any written calendar, and they fit the sleeping mind beautifully. Perhaps, somewhere beyond the shelter, the moon breaks through clouds and lays a pale light on the snow. The ridge shines faintly, the smoke hole releases a thin thread into the night. From above, the shelter is barely visible. It is small, fragile, nearly swallowed by the land. Yet inside, a world is complete. There are tools, memories, relationships, lessons, hopes, annoyances, jokes, aches, dreams. There is hunger, yes, and cold, yes, but also care. Care is the ember that does not go out long after the people move on. Long after the roof falls, long after the hearth cools forever, that care becomes difficult to prove. But difficulty is not absence. The archaeological record is partial, not empty. A hearth suggests gathering. Repaired tools suggest work. Sleeping areas suggest rest. Carefully arranged stones suggest planning. Repeated occupation suggests return. And return suggests that a place mattered. A place mattered because it worked, because it gave shelter from wind, because it held heat, because it was near resources, because it was known, because people had memories there, perhaps because someone was born there during a storm, perhaps because someone recovered from illness there, perhaps because an elder told the best stories near that wall. These possibilities cannot always be tested, but they remind us that ancient sites were not only data points. They were places where life felt personal. When you hear the word Paleolithic, it can sound distant and cold, like a label in a museum. But inside the label were evenings. Inside the label were tired feet, warm hands, smoky hair, shared food, quiet irritation, sudden laughter, lullabies, repairs, and sleep. The word is large. The life was lived in small moments tonight. We have followed those small moments because they are the ones that make history breathe. Now let the story become less about information and more about feeling. Feel the low roof. Feel the layered bedding. Feel the warmth strongest near the hearth and fading toward the walls. Feel the slight roughness of hide. Feel the dry grass under the sleeping skins. Feel the stone that has held heat long after flame lowered. Feel the heaviness of tired limbs finally allowed to rest. There is nothing more to solve. The shelter has been built. The fire has been banked. The wall has been checked. The young have learned a little. The old have been warmed. The night has entered its deepest, quietest part. If thoughts come and go, let them move like smoke toward the roof. If the mind reaches for one more fact, give it a simple one. Humans have always sought warmth together. If the mind reaches for one more image, give it the coal under ash. If the body wants to sink, let it sink. The ancient shelter is holding its people, and your own place is holding you. The wind moves outside the ridge, softer now. It no longer sounds like a threat. It sounds like distance. Snow lies along the wall. The entrance flap is still. The fire is hidden but alive. Aaron sleeps. Luma sleeps. Luma sleeps. The old woman sleeps. The children sleep. The tools hang quietly in the dark. The stones keep their slow warmth. Morning is not needed yet. Nothing needs to happen yet. For now, the value of the shelter is simply that it allows not happening. No walking, no gathering, no scraping, no lifting, no deciding, only breathing, only warmth held in common, only the dark made gentle by human care. This is enough. The fire holds, the wall holds, the warmth remains, and somewhere beneath the ash, waiting for the hand that will find it at dawn, the old red coal continues to glow.